Are you lacking accountability and structure to find your next? I was. Are you a business leader or retired athlete looking for your next identity? This is the place for you. This is the Business Athlete Performance Lab. Hi, I'm Keith Billis, and this is Live in the Lab. All right. A little bit of weirdness in front of the camera there for anybody's watching, because I'm like, hey, where's the button? Where's the button? I can't get it going. How did you go viral on TikTok? You were on America's Got Talent. How much do you get paid to be on AGT? Oh, you didn't get paid. Keith and Steve here in Live in the Lab.
You're a great interviewer. I love it.
48 miles, 48 hours. And not just once. You ain't seen nothing yet. I hit 50 last time, and I'm like, yeah, things are a little different than they were 10 years ago. So trust me, things are to keep. You have no time for the BS that much of society seems to put on the table. Why is that? Like, what you're talking about is real right now. There's just no bullshit here, but it's just real. We brought you in with some Marley. I said, Joseph, let's talk music for a second. You said, well, Keith, oldies, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've never talked to a sir before. Why are you a sir? In many ways, we're the same story. I came from nothing. You came from nothing. I think the old saying goes that if you want a trophy, you climb Everest. If you want respect, you climb K2. I've built an AI myself, and it's pretty fascinating when you can have a conversation with yourself with your own knowledge. Have you done that before? Why are we rushing to make these tools if all they're going to do is hurt humanity? Does the world need an Oppenheimer moment with AI?
What a fun show.
Hey everybody, Keith here, live in the lab. I'm live in the Jeep. You're thinking, what's he doing right now? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm shooting my opener. It's no month. It's no month. No peanut butter for this guy for the month. I'm starting to feel a little chubby, a little chunky, a little insulated as we head towards the Christmas season. All right, so why am I recording to you in the truck? Well, I'll tell you why. My morning routine completely thrown off guard. Why is that? And no hat. A lot of parking space up here today. So what's the scoop, you're wondering? What's the scoop, you're wondering? Well, let me tell you what the scoop is. We all have our routines, our structure. What do you do when those routines or structure get thrown out of whack? Wow. Well, I'll tell you, this morning my dogs woke me up, typical time, went up and fed them, but I was a little tired, late night last night. It's Halloween, right? My face is in the cookie jar, my face is in the peanut.
This one or this one?
So what did I do? I went back, put my head down. Startled to be awoken at 7:41. Baby, yeah, it's 7:41. Oh my goodness, I look at Lauren. Yeah, we slept in. We slept in. I never sleep in. I never sleep in. So, Daddy had to get in the truck and drive those kids to school and heading back to the lab to get back in front of the desk and get to work. So, a little off. And I thought I would express myself in the Oprah today, what happens when things just go, when shit goes sideways. Coming up on today's show, we got David Bagga. David Bagga. Interesting fellow. Came across his LinkedIn profile feed a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we got to chat. Corporate Hoops. Runs a podcast. Highest recommended medical sales device professional in the United States. David Bagga coming up today, live in the lab, just here in a few seconds. So I'm going to stop this video, going to throw it back to the desk, or I'm going to be sitting when you see me next, and we're going to go from there.
You got Keith Billis here. It's Wednesday. We're funking it up, bringing it into the lab. Hey, do you ever feel like you're part of something early? You're watching something special unfold in front of your eyes? You know that feeling you're in a nightclub with a couple of hundred other people? Maybe 10. Maybe there's just you and your friend. You're watching this artist on stage. They're special. They're doing spectacular work. You see them getting better every single show. And you're like, yeah, I like this artist. I like what they're putting out there. I can buy into it. I'm really vibing. I'm digging it. Then you take that artist and you wrap your arms around them. And you become a fan. You're like, yes, they're mine. And you watch that artist go from 200 to 300 person clubs to 500 person clubs. Next time they're through town, they're doing the concert hall. The concert hall. You can hear the music in the background there. Then they make their way from the concert hall. And where do they head next? They head to the arena. And then after they leave the arena, they're back a few years later and they're in the stadium. And you're saying to yourself, wow, I remember when that artist was in that 200 seat club with me and they were awesome. Now I'm here with 30,000 other fans that love this artist like I do. You know what I'm talking about. Those early shows of Drake, The Weeknd, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, isn't our audience guys? Retired athletes? We all know we're closet Swifties. And I know why we are closet Swifties. We're closet Swifties because our wives and our daughters, they all love Taylor Swift. Got a little note from Kurt Stein. He posted it on LinkedIn. Little tip to all you retired athletes and business guys. A great way to connect with your family. Go to the Taylor Swift movie. Yeah, sit for a couple hours. Don't got to spend thousands of dollars going to the stadium. Go watch the movie. Spend some time with the family. But hey, putting Taylor aside, bring us back to the conversation. 30,000 fans, you're in the stadium and you're like, I don't feel like they're mine anymore. I wish we were back to the days of 200 seat clubs. So why am I sharing all this with you? Because that's what I feel like is unfolding right in front of us right now here live in the lab. Every single show, we're getting better. Every single show, we're catching our vibe. Every single show, the creative machine is falling into place. We're trying to do things differently here in the lab. This is not a hobby cast. No, this is a show. We're here to entertain you, inform you. Notice I didn't say inform and entertain. Everybody else is informing. Let them inform. We're going to entertain and inform and bring you along for the ride. I want to create a show that I would be entertained by. Something that would fill up 30, 45, 60 minutes of my day. Something that I can connect to. A community that I can connect to. And that's what we're doing here in the lab. This Friday, dropping in the lab, Dale Weiss, life after the buzzer, retired NHL athlete. Since he was 5 years old, identified with a dream, with becoming a professional hockey player. He achieved it. Played for 13 years. Then he wakes up today doing this. I thought I was an athlete. I want to be a business guy, but I don't know what to do next. So Dale, in a very vulnerable interview with myself, opens up this Friday. After the buzzer, brand new segment. We're coming back. We're creating special content here live in the lab. Every single day, we're bringing in an incredible guest to share their stories, pull the wrapper back, be authentic, be raw. Today, we have David Bagga coming up. So I invite you, if you're just tuning in for the first time into Live in the Lab, go back to some of our shows. You can see the progression from show 1 to yesterday. The confidence is riding high. The quality of music is getting better. The audience is starting to get what we are putting together here. The audience, you, is starting to drink the Kool-Aid. And when the audience starts to drink the Kool-Aid, we all rise to the top. So, if you can see like I can see to the stadium, because we're going to be in the stadium, I invite you today into the club. Let's connect. Let's get to know one another. The easier that you get to know me and the better I get to know you, the better content we can create so we can go fill stadiums and then invite other people along the way. We are the only talk show specifically made for business leaders and retired athletes. The only talk show. So, we know today is the beginning of no month. No month. I'm saying no to peanut butter. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to reach off the camera over here. Bring my peanut butter jar. My good old Adam's. Best peanut butter around, I'm telling you. Got my masking tape. We're going to tape it up. All right? We're going to tape this baby up. We're going to put it on here behind me, and it's going to sit there for at least a month. And I'm going to say no to peanut butter. So I invite you to say no to something. Maybe it's sugar. Maybe it's peanut butter. Maybe it's any kind of butter. Maybe it's just putting drinks aside for a month. Nah, I'm not asking you to become sober. Nobody's saying be sober. Just put some drinks aside for a few weeks. Go get your blood work done instead. I don't know. Maybe there's different choices you can make. And one of those choices is to say no more often than yes. That's the no month here, live in the lab. Time to segue. We're going to ask our guest what he's saying no to this month. David Bagga. He's over here on the screen. I'm going to look that way. We're going to bring David Bagga into the lab and have a conversation with David Bagga, joining us live in the lab. David.
Keith, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me and my taped up jar of peanut butter today.
Yeah, I love the intro, man. Thanks for having me. This is great.
I'm extremely excited to have you here. The highest rated medical device professional in the United States.
Yeah, so it's the most. I'll make sure
it's reliable. Correct me.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'm saying it right, so I'm not misleading anybody out there, especially on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm the, knock on wood, I'm the most recommended med device recruiter on LinkedIn by candidates. I have almost 300 recommendations on LinkedIn. It's taken me a little over 10 years to build that, so it's something that I'm proud of to this day. So yeah.
And you should be proud of that. It was one of the reasons that so first of all, I stumbled upon your post in the feed about corporate hoops, and we'll get there in a few moments. But then I looked into your profile and I was astonished. Who uses that word? But I was astonished by what you had accomplished. And I said to myself, that is a lot of work and a lot of commitment and a lot of focus and a lot of diligence, specifically saying to yourself, I'm going to go and become successful in this, because it just didn't happen by accident. You had to go and nurture that, work that, probably put a lot of effort into that. Explain to myself and the audience, David, how you achieved this accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. I was my dream, kind of backtracking about 12 years ago, I wanted to be in broadcasting. I was a former college basketball player and brief overseas basketball player. I played college basketball at the University of Arizona. And then I tried very hard to play overseas in England and in Finland and in Wales, and then in the NBA D League at the time. And it just wasn't meant to be. And it was about a good year of trying out, flying all over the country, flying all over the world, just anywhere that would give me a chance to play. And I think I heard no probably almost 100 times. And I remember on one of the plane rides home, one of the guys told me, he said, if you're hearing no this much, you should probably go into sales. And we all just kind of started laughing about it. But I always had a passion for broadcasting, and so that was my next kind of thing that I wanted to tackle. And I was 24 at the time, and moved to LA for about 2 years. I was broadcasting. I got my first gig was doing the play-by-play for the Long Beach State University women's basketball team. I did that for 2 seasons, and it was on their internet radio. And so it was a lot of fun. I made some great relationships, had some great times along the way, and in between that, I was interviewing at ESPN LA, Pac-12 network, Fox Sports 1 when they were getting that off the ground, because my dream was to be a sideline reporter.
Okay.
In the NBA. That was my dream. I kept telling myself, when you go to a restaurant and you're with your significant other, I want you seeing me on that TV at the bar. And that was my hope. And
that's a cool dream, David. Like, that is to anybody in my audience listening to that, it's got to put a big grin on their face, because you can relate to that. I can completely relate, because those faces become synonymous forever, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I kept thinking, I would tell my friends, I would tell them after the pro basketball dream died, I would tell them, I'd be like, look, I'm going to give this a shot. I was like, I don't know where I'm going, what I'm heading off to do, but I'm going to try. And I said, I was like, the dream is if one day on a Saturday night, even if you're drunk at the bar, you're going to see me on TV. And you're gonna know, you're gonna be like, hey, I went to school with that guy, or I played basketball with that guy, or something, you know. And so it was a 2-year run. I had an agent. I was grinding a lot. I didn't really have much free time to do much else. And so unfortunately, after a lot of auditions, a lot of interviewing, it didn't happen. I had one job offer. It was from, I want to say it was from an NBC station or an ABC station up in Boise, Idaho. And so I didn't want to go to Boise. I wanted to go big time. And I didn't understand that really you have to start so small and then work your way up.
How relatable to my intro then, isn't it? Because in my intro, I talk about, listening to an artist or a comedian or a reporter in Boise, Idaho, in front of 100 people, when your dream is to be in front of 1 million people or in front of 100,000 people in Oakland Stadium, right?
Yeah, and it was really humbling because at the time I was 25 at the time, and so I had an agent, I had people that I was talking to in the industry. At the time, Golden State Warriors, he's now the Golden State Warriors head coach, but he was an analyst for TNT at the time, Steve Kerr. He was kind of my indirect mentor. Like, I would email him when I had questions, and we met up a few times because of our connection playing college basketball at the University of Arizona. And, he would tell me we had a team reunion in 2011, and I told him that this is what I've been given an opportunity to do, broadcasting women's basketball. And he would tell me, like, hey, if you need anything, just reach out. Like, that's the type of guy that he is. And so I think I was probably emailing him like once a week or every other week just with questions. And, and God bless Steve, he would respond whenever he could. And he really is, the salt of the earth and just a wonderful human being. So I'm grateful for that type of advice that he gave me.
I want to hang on that, what you just said, and I want to interrupt you, and I apologize, but I want to hang on that. You said you emailed him weekly. Many of my, I'd say, audience that want to take the next step and have success are stuck, and they're reluctant to send the email. With all respect, you're a young punk sitting at your BlackBerry, your iPhone, or your laptop, and you're just banging off the emails, weren't you? What, did you just have no fear?
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, I mean, I think my personality is probably pretty, I'm a former athlete, right? So it's like I'm pretty loud, and, I happen to be 6'5", 6'6", so it's like
you leave an impression.
Yeah, I mean, and again, for better or for worse, right? So, I'll walk into a room and I don't touch alcohol, I don't drink, and I happen to be, unfortunately, a very loud human being, and I'm very blunt, and it can rub some people the wrong way. It could also, some people might see it and they'd be like, hey, I want to work with this guy, or I want to talk to this guy, and so Steve had he still has, if you watch him coach, he has a very calm demeanor about him, but if you remember seeing in The Last Dance, he can turn it on like that, and he's super competitive. And so we had some great conversations. We had a lunch. I think I want to say it was in late 2011 before the college basketball season started, and it was supposed to be about an hour, and it wound up being about 3.5 hours. And we were talking hoops, we were talking all things Michael Jordan, and we were talking all things broadcasting, and I emailed a ton of people, and besides Steve, guys like Darren Ravel, Jeff Goodman, just people that I knew in the industry or that had covered us when I was playing at U of A. And there were people that didn't respond, and I didn't, I knew, I was like, all right, you're probably not going to hear from everybody, but the ones that I did hear from, I remembered, I was like, all right, I'm going to write down all the advice that they have, and I'm going to, just apply it to this and whatever I venture into. And that's what I did.
That's really cool. So let's continue your journey from college basketball player, aspiring broadcaster, to the accolades that you have today at the David Bagga Company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in 2012, late 2012, during the season for the Long Beach State women's team, when I kind of knew that the broadcasting wasn't going to happen, I just wasn't getting very much traction, and it had been almost 2 years at this point. I was living in LA. I was dating somebody, and we had also broken up. So I was like, all right, I need to get back home to Orange County now, and I need to figure it out. And I'm, very fortunate too. I have two parents that are still together. They've always kind of been my, my rock and my sounding board. And I just sat down with them, and I pretty much broke down emotionally. And I was like, I have no idea where I'm going. And I was like, I have these skills, but I just don't know where this is going to be taking me, where I want to go. And one of the people that I met, I think when I was interviewing, I want to say it was with ESPN LA or maybe the Pac-12 network. They had a friend that was a sales rep at a company called Paychecks, and I had moved back to Orange County at this point, and I was playing pickup basketball at our local gym. And there was a guy there who also had worked for the company Paychecks, and he had told me, he's like, hey, you might want to check these guys out. They hire a lot of people without experience. And for those of people that aren't familiar, Paychecks is a payroll company. They supply payroll to small businesses, and they compete with a company called ADP, which is automatic data processing. And so both companies are pretty much world renowned, depending on, I think, where you're at in sales and if you know about that part of sales. And so they're both like Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies. And so so I looked into the company, and I didn't want to go into sales. That wasn't my thing. I was just like, all right, I want to be just, my dream. If I couldn't be on the TV when people are at Yard House or at the bar, I'd want to be sitting in front of a webcam just talking about basketball and sneakers all day, every day, maybe sprinkled in with some superhero stuff, right? And so, but I needed to make money, and I needed to pay back some of my student loans, and I got to Paychecks, and what happened was the lady that hired me, she actually got pregnant, and she never came back. So my manager was expecting a baby, and so myself and the 3 or 4 other new hires that were there, we were left on an island pretty much for about a year or a little over a year. And during that time, I had gotten rid of all my social media when the broadcasting stuff ended, because I had Instagram, I had Facebook, I had Twitter, and I was using it to promote myself as a broadcaster. And after that, it all happened. The one thing I didn't get rid of was LinkedIn, because I remember one of the producers from Fox Sports 1 was like, hey, you're going to need this when you look for a job. Like, LinkedIn is a lot more powerful than people think. And Keith, this is 2012, 2013. So LinkedIn wasn't the tool that it is now. And during that time when I was at Paychecks, I want to say it was almost 60 or 70 what they call in-mails. How people say on Instagram and Twitter, they say slide in, or I guess on X, someone will slide into someone's DMs, right? And so on LinkedIn, the running joke is that someone slides into your in-mails. And so I had about 60, 70 in-mails from all these med device recruiters. And I talked to one of them, and he had basically told me that he was like, hey, I have this medical device job. You'd be a great fit. These companies love hiring former athletes. And I kept thinking, I was like, why? I was like, what's in it for them? And he just said, he's like, you guys have all had surgeries and injuries, and you're competitive, and it's the first one in, last one out mentality. Fast forward, I interviewed with a company called Stryker, and I fainted on my field ride at the hospital because I have a very low pain tolerance when I see something gory. And they were performing surgery on a young man's head, and I just couldn't handle it in the OR. And but what happened was, how I kind of fell into this was the recruiter that I was working with, which happened, to be a different recruiter at the time, who was trying to get me the job. I had told her, I was like, hey, I have all these disgruntled coworkers at Paychecks, and they're all trying to get into this industry. Little did I know. And so I told her, I was like, listen, I can just refer them to you if you want. And I said, and she told me, she was like, hey, if you give me the list of your coworkers that are looking with their email and their phone number, she's like, I'll take care of the rest. And she said, I'll pay you for it. And me being 25, 26 years old at the time, I was thinking like, okay, what is she going to give me, like $50 a referral here? And I didn't realize she was actually going to split the commission on the deals with me. And so I kind of fell into it. We wound up together, this lady and I wound up placing 7 people from my office in Orange County. in these med device jobs, and that's how it happened.
And then it just took a life of its own on.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what I was really getting into. I just knew that because everybody that I talked to that didn't get the jobs were still great people. They were former athletes like me, and some of the people that I placed were former athletes like me. But I knew I was having fun, and I was just like, man, we can all kind of relate to the same thing. We're all in the same boat here, and it just, I told myself, I went to my parents and I said, look, I was like, this is what happened. And I said, this is where I'm at with this company. I was like, I'm going to pivot into this full time. I've been fortunate enough to save up enough for about a year or two to survive. And I just said, I was like, worst case scenario will lead to something else, something good, hopefully. And, knock on wood, it's been a little over 10 years now.
What a fascinating story.
Nice.
And what I find fascinating as well is I see your personal branding, and in a world of hyper niche branding, hyper personalized branding, boom, big headline, ranked in the top 1% by LinkedIn for sales recruiting. Like, you make no bones about the fact that a lot of people, here's what I'm great at, is basically what you're saying. Here's what I'm great at, and here's my trophies. Come look at them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I learned.
It's a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. We celebrate that. If you had Stanley Cups or any World Series trophy behind you, they're behind you. They're not in the closet.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, and I learned. I mean, I feel like I got pretty fortunate, because when I pivoted into this in 2013, it was a time, I think, when LinkedIn was starting to pivot as well.
Yeah.
And they were starting to incorporate hashtags. They were starting to let you post more than one picture. They were starting to let you post videos. And in 2015, I kind of realized, I was like, all right, no other recruiters are putting videos out there, at least that I can see, that are my age. At the time, I was 28, 29, and I'm going to be 37 later this year. And so I was looking at kind of the landscape, and I was like, all right, let me put my broadcasting hat on here, and let me make a quick 5-minute video of, this is some recruiting advice for candidates that are actively looking, or this is what you do on a resume, and this is what you do, this is the attire that you need to wear. Because there's a lot of things, Keith, when people are interviewing for these jobs, you'd be surprised, man. I mean, I joke with people, if you're ever having a bad day and you want to hear the stories that we hear on the phone from managers or from some of my recruiting partners, like, you'll probably laugh pretty hard with that jar of peanut butter. You'll need to eat that to calm yourself down. Let's put it that way. So the no November won't be in effect with that. So
that's I'm sure you have tons of stories, which obviously is a good reason for the podcast coming up. So yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, before we continue down your journey down your journey, what your experience as a pro basketball player in the British Basketball League. Right. You played pro sport.
Right.
How did that set you up for business? And how do you take some of those things you learned there to what you do in business day to day today?
Yeah. So it wasn't the best experience, just because, I was on a circuit. I was trying out. I flew myself out there. Unfortunately, I didn't make a team. There was even one game where I think, from what a lot of it, I tried to block it out because it wasn't the best experience. I had one good game where I think I had 8 or 9. I'm a catch and shoot guy, so I had about 8 or 9 threes. And then, unfortunately, the next game, I think the guy that I was guarding, he scored. I think he dropped 51 or 52 on me. So I got cut immediately, from that tryout. They were just like, hey, we've seen enough. And it's a business, and it doesn't matter what level you're at in the professional ranks, whether it's the highest level in the NBA or the minor league, which now is the NBA G League. At the time, it was the D League. I joke with my friends, I got cut mid-workout in 2009. Yeah, in an NBA D League tryout, I literally got cut in the middle of a layup drill. We had to do we had to do these certain cuts, and I just kept doing it wrong. But I was still able to, get past the defender and get my shot off. And I was just like, hey, I can care less. I'm still gonna do it just to do it. And they were just like, hey. They didn't even say my name. I think my jersey number was 238 or something. They were like, 238, you're out, go. We've seen enough. But what I learned was that, big picture, you're going to hear no a lot. It's going to be competitive. But you have to, it's kind of like what Tom Brady says, you have to come back every single day, no matter what. And you have to compete, because if you compete even a little bit, it'll lead to something, it'll unlock something in you. And that's what I've learned throughout all this. That's what being an athlete taught me.
My audience of retired athletes and business leaders, especially the retired athlete in this situation, used to have saying no to a lot, and then had a wonderful professional career, and then scared of what happens once the pro career is over, right? And overcoming that resilience. You stumbled into you said yourself, you stumbled into your career within medical sales devices. However, prior to that, you had a breakdown, you said, with your parents. And was it an identity situation of, I've been an athlete, I wanted to be a broadcaster, I now have no clue where the hell I'm going now?
Yeah, great question. I wouldn't say an identity issue. I would say it was more because, I'll backtrack too, if you don't mind. So for me, like playing at the University of Arizona, which is a major powerhouse Division I college for basketball players, the nickname for U of A is Point Guard U, because a lot of the great point guards in NBA history have come, in the last 30, 35 years have come from U of A. You got Steve Kerr, Damon Stoudemire, Gilbert Arenas. I think now I'm trying to think who else. He's on the Indiana Pacers. I'm blanking on his name, but it'll come back to me. But there's been a lot of great guards. TJ McConnell, I'm sorry, that's his name. So there's been just a lot of great guards that have come from U of A. So even as a walk-on, I was the last guy on the bench, but I was treated like I was averaging 20 and 5 and 5, and I was an All-American. And the love that they show you when you're an 18 to 22-year-old while you're still wearing the jersey was second to none. I would get notoriety pretty much wherever I would go, in airports, across the country. People knew me. They were just like, oh, you're the guy at the end of the bench that always waves a towel, like on SportsCenter. And so I was getting that type of love. So it kind of went to my head a little bit. And when that ended, just like that, it was a kick in the ass. It was a shell shock moment, because I wasn't prepared. I was so heads down focused on being a hooper and being in that world. That's where the struggle came in. And that's where it was hard to accept, okay, this is really not going to happen anymore. And so I think that the breakdown came because I just wasn't prepared for even as a walk-on, for life after being an athlete. And I'm happy to say that's probably what that job at Paychex did. It taught me a little bit more structure. I had all the things I learned from being an athlete, like the work ethic and getting up at 5 a.m., going to sleep at 10 or 11 p.m. and not getting not doing stuff on a 3 or 5 hour sleep tank, right? And you learn all those things when you're an athlete. You just learn how to grind through. But yeah, I definitely was not prepared the way that I probably should have been 11 years ago.
David, I want to throw a clip your way. I want to show you something. It's about a 90-second clip here. Retired NHL hockey player, played for 13 years pro, 10 years in the NHL. Talks about his struggles like you did. Now, I want to show you the clip and get your comments on it. Okay, I'm going to flip it on here for a second.
Hey everybody, you got Keith Billis here, live in the lab. We're announcing a brand new segment. It's called After the Buzzer. Life After the Game with Dale Weiss. So, who's Dale Weiss?
Well, that's a good question. At the moment, I am a 35-year-old father of 4. I'm working my way through a new adjustment in life. I retired 2 years ago from hockey. I think I'm just trying to find that next stage in life and where I'm going.
So we spoke about identity, and we spoke about loss of identity.
I was in the NHL for 10, and then professionally I was 13.
We're building up a brand new show here. We're looking to speak to retired athletes like yourself. We're looking to speak to business guys who are trying to get to that next stage in life. We invite you guys to join us weekly, to connect, to share Dale's experiences as an athlete whose identity has been as an athlete.
Everything in my whole life since I was 5 years old, I've identified as a hockey player. From the time I was 5 years old, my only dream was to be a hockey player. And when you talk about identity, for me, I'll admit I don't know what my identity is anymore. Like I said, from 5 to 33, I was a hockey player. I identified as a hockey player. I spoke of myself in my own personal thoughts as Dale Weiss, the hockey player. I'm struggling mentally with kind of just letting go of the spotlight a little bit. That feeling that I would get on a Saturday night walking into the Bell Center. You got the cameras on you, you got your sharps, you're just trying to find that feeling and just trying to find that identity outside of hockey, something I'm really struggling with.
That's a lot to unpack. I can't imagine the emotion of going from being on stage in front of 20,000 people, putting you on a pedestal, and then it's all gone.
Yeah, it was for me. And I think that's something maybe I'm still struggling with, and I need to just let go.
If you can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, probably not as much as he can because he did it at a way higher level for a lot longer than I did. So, I mean, you talk about that's a guy 13 years, 10 of them at the highest level that you can get in his sport, right, at the NHL. So, seems like a really, really good guy though, and I feel like I've heard his name before. I don't follow hockey that much, but I feel like I've seen his name like online and just when he was in the NHL. So. I mean, kudos to him for coming forward, and I think for admitting that he's looking for that next step and what he's going to do. I think that's I think the biggest thing with being an athlete. I think no matter what level you're at, like when it's in you, it's very hard to get out of your system, and no matter if you're a 10, 11 year NHL pro, a pros pro like that guy, or someone even like myself who was at the end of the bench, and maybe only got 2 or 3 minutes of playing time, because I backed up 5 guys that went to the NBA. And so it's I could definitely understand where he's coming from, but I think for him, his is probably, and this isn't a knock, I'm saying it's probably a lot more for him because he was at the highest of levels that you could be at as an athlete. So, but I think if he has a good support system, which sounds like he has a great family, I'm sure he'll be able to pivot and figure out what he's meant to do with his life after hockey.
Well, Dale's well on his way to pivoting. He's a successful business guy. He's a real estate investor, but we've been talking about this for a while now, and he's been very vulnerable with me. And I said, well, listen, let's go tell your story. So we invited Dale into the lab, and he's now involved in the Business Athlete Performance Lab to bring on guys like Dale, guys like yourselves that really know where to share those stories and express themselves, and then figure out what is next when you've lived such a structured lifestyle. And Dale talks about in the show Dropping This Friday, a little plug for the show, Dropping This Friday, he talks about how the last 3 years have been a real struggle for him, going from that structured lifestyle, that team, being part of a team, right, David? And then all of a sudden, boom, where'd the team go?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think for me, it took, and I have no problem admitting this because I graduated college and I played at Arizona from 2005 to 2009. Did the whole overseas and minor league basketball circuit from 2009 to 2010. It took me probably a legit 5 years to actually be like, all right, like University of Arizona basketball was one part of my life. And now I've pivoted into this other part of being a small business owner, and a med device recruiter. And so once I understood, I was like, okay, I'm good at something else. That's what was able to help me, kind of move on.
This is fascinating because this weaves really into, I would invite you to check out our show yesterday with Dr. Sarah Lavelle. She talked about guys like yourselves, guys like Dale, guys like myself. I've gone through this myself in my business career, learning how to accept what's next. Mm-hmm. Right. So you said yourself, it took you 5 years to recognize, okay, I'm going to put this in air quotes to those that are listening on the podcast. I'm just a very successful medical device sales professional who probably makes a lot of cash on a consistent basis, but I haven't wrapped my head around the fact that I'm not standing in the middle of the court with a microphone in my hand. That's the balance, the struggle you have in your head, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's, for a couple of years, like I didn't watch the NBA. I didn't watch basketball. Yeah. For about a good 3 or 4 years. And I mean, I didn't watch it consistently. You
stepped away from the game though, didn't you?
Yeah, well, because like you would see people on the sideline, and you'd be like, oh, like I remember seeing that person at an interview at like for the Pac-12 network, and now they're in the NBA finals courtside, like, giving an update for, a radio show or something, or a TV show, or you see people I went to I think it was a Clipper game like 6 years ago. And I remember seeing this girl on the sideline, and I was like, she looks so familiar. And then someone told me, they're like, oh, that's so-and-so. She works for NBA TV. I was like, oh, I interviewed with her back in 2011. And so, you know, you can kind of look back on it and be like, oh, like it's crazy, like where life's journeys take you. But yeah, I was definitely a little salty for a while. And then, but I got so entrenched in what I was doing now that I kind of realized I was like, hey, they got their journey, I got mine. And then, you know, you just move onward and upward.
So we've set the stage who David Bagga is. I think we all have a clear point of view of who David is. And we weaved LinkedIn into the conversation and the way you've been able to utilize these tools to your advantage a few moments ago. But I want to bring us back to LinkedIn. You got over 37,000 followers. You've done a really wonderful job building your network. LinkedIn is different today than it was 10 years ago. How has LinkedIn changed in the last 15 months? And how are you using your 37,000 plus followers to leverage your network on a daily basis?
So I think LinkedIn has changed in the last probably 15 months. I would say that now I think it's becoming almost kind of a like a better platform. It's almost like a springboard for a small business owner, someone like myself. Because I think, you know, like I was saying earlier, Keith, like I don't have any other social media. LinkedIn is my, I mean, I don't have or want kids, but LinkedIn is my baby. Like my LinkedIn page is literally like my baby. Like I check it every day. I'm, you know, refreshing it every day. I'm giving it the proper treatment every day. I'm making sure that
I can tell
this is the best possible profile that I can put out there for, you know, for my followers, and most of them are candidates, which I love talking to and helping. But I think that just the amount of content that somebody can post has changed a lot. I think LinkedIn used to give you, 4 slots for pictures. Now it's, 9 or 10. And I think that'll change at a certain point, because I remember when I had Instagram, you could, if you were going to do like what they call like a photo dump, you could do like photos and videos in the same posting, right? Like I think that'll eventually be LinkedIn too. I think it would help LinkedIn a lot more if they did that, because doing the separate posting can get a little tedious. But I think to me, the word I always think of is a springboard. That's the key word that comes over and over in my head again. But the thing that people have to keep in mind is that you have to, in my opinion, you have to stay in your lane on LinkedIn. Like I'm not a political person. I'm not in that arena, nor do I want to be. So I'm not going to comment on that stuff. Just because, number one, I have LinkedIn to recruit candidates for med device sales jobs and be a med device recruiter and a small business owner. The only other stuff that I will post on there besides medical device jobs is anything basketball related, because I was a former college and pro basketball player. Other than that, there's nothing that I'm going to put on there, because everything is so transparent now. And everything is so, what's the word? Everybody lives in a glass house, and you can get in trouble, in my opinion, by trying to be those type of people, whether you're on one side or the other. And so for me, it's in my head, it's like, okay, focus on that craft, focus on your craft, and just leave it at that. But try and put it on steroids if you can, in a positive way.
I'm very fortunate to meet a brand new person every single day. We do the show noon -5 GMT, Monday to Friday, on YouTube, LinkedIn, X. What is one thing you would teach me? And that's my goal every single day, to learn from my guests. What's one thing you would teach me about LinkedIn today? Say, Keith, you need to know this. Is it the stay in your lane comment, or is there something even more specific? Teach me something, teach my audience something about LinkedIn that's going to make my life better at the end of the show.
Well, the stay in your lane thing is just to be, I always take the approach of it's better to be safe than sorry, because, for example, if you're a candidate and you post something about the state of the union right now with the politics, or with with people like that, a company might see that and they might be like, hey, Dave, we're not going to hire Keith because of what he's saying about the GOP or the left or the right. Like, so we just try to tell candidates that, just to make them realize, like, hey, you just got to play this safe, right? Like, but the one thing I would say is that just don't be afraid to post every day. I mean, there's stuff that I post and people won't even like it or comment. I don't care, because I know it's like, hey, like this is helping my small business. This is helping my page, and it's continuing to build, my small brand on LinkedIn. And
I like that you said, I don't care, because too many people think that everybody else is caring, but you're like, no, I'm just posting because I don't care. It's for my business, right? That's your attitude, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, for me personally, like, I think I really stopped caring when I turned 30. I was like, all right, I have a system in place. I understand what I'm doing now. Like, this is every couple times a week. And I still don't really understand algorithms or stuff like that. I just know it's like, hey, I'm a Michael Jordan guy, so I love doing the MJ Monday post. I mean, you see him hanging up right behind me. It's like, that's my inspiration. Like, I was a 90s kid. I take his mentality that he had and I apply it to my small business. And this is my med device book that came out back in 2017. And I think I was posting like every holiday for like 3 or 4 years, just me in the book, like with a Santa hat or with something like that, or with Thanksgiving stuff or with Halloween stuff. And it was just trying to build like my small business brand, because I knew I was like, all right, this is what I have to do it myself. No one's going to do it for me. But I don't know him personally, but I've watched a lot of what he said. And I remember Gary Vaynerchuk, he came out with this guide. I think it was called like the 98 cents or 98 2 cents content guide. And his main message in there is like, you can't be afraid to post every day on LinkedIn if you have to. Because he was like, what do you think companies are doing on Twitter and on Instagram? Like, they're trying to sell their product to us, or they're trying to promote something. And so I took that approach too. But that's what I've learned. And that would be my big thing, is that do not be afraid to post on LinkedIn every day, because, all it takes is a couple people to like and comment, and then more people see it and they're like, hey, what he or she's doing is interesting.
You can't catch any fish if you don't have a hook in the water, right?
Exactly.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? But yet we're also scared to throw the hook in the water.
Yeah, I think because too, it's again, not being a part of those other social media worlds. I think a lot of people, and you probably see it, I'm sure, with other guests that you have on, like, and I noticed you guys are on Instagram too. You probably see there's so many people that are influenced by that world, and their whole life is shattered if they're not having like the promotion on that world, right? Or on those other social media platforms. That's what I've seen too. And
we've made a concerted effort to focus our efforts on LinkedIn. Our audience is definitely there. I will admit to you, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, when we started out, we threw a wide net. We were doing too much, and much of it was failing. It was like, all right, we're not doing a really good job failing right now. So let's start pulling it back in, pulling it back in, pulling it back in. And we've been really honing in on growing on LinkedIn, and then going from there. So, and truthfully, I'm not going to lie to you, straight up to you, looking at what you're doing, going, okay, well, look at what's Bagga doing, because whatever he's doing, he's having success, right? So it's follow the leader. And I will tell you, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Hey, you know what? Thanks, man. Because I'll say this, on my MJ Monday post, that's half the stuff that I post is me in like the Jordan shoes, and I put a picture next to MJ, like, hey, imitation's flattery, right? So, no, I appreciate that. I mean, but yeah, I think the more and more you put yourself out there, as long as it's, in my opinion, as long as it's nothing that is damaging, I think, what you're doing,
right?
I think it always leads to something better, like to help promote your brand on LinkedIn and what you're doing too. I mean, because I know for me personally, if I got super political on LinkedIn, there would probably be emails in my inbox from candidates saying, hey, I don't want to work with you anymore.
Right.
And so, and I'm aware of that. And I've seen that from certain candidates too, that post political stuff. And it's like, hey, just focus on getting their resume to the manager or to the person we need to, and then move on.
David, you're a true business athlete. We're coming towards the wrap up of our hour here, and I got a couple last questions before we say goodbye together. You're absolutely a business athlete. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What do you do on a daily basis today to take care of David, the human, the machine, the mind, the body, the physical soul? What do you do, David?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So there's a couple things. For me, from a physical standpoint, I work out 6 out of 7 days a week. I take one day where I actually, no pun intended, I live in the lab,
nice.
and I stretch for about an hour. Just everything, core, hips, legs, just my whole body, just to kind of get right for the week mentally. And so I lift about 5 days a week. I can't play basketball for another couple months. I have a partially torn Achilles right now, so that kind of sucks. But I'll be back probably end of January. So mentally, let me finish physically. So I'm doing the spin bike about 3 times a week too, which has been a lot of fun. Mentally, I meditate every morning for about 10 to 15 minutes. I have my goals written down. I read them, and I look at them every single morning before I start work. And then I watch a clip from the Last Dance documentary, because I watched the little opening clip of Michael Jordan saying when he's in the practice facility called the Berto Center, and he says, "Let's put things aside and focus on that craft." So it kind of gets me going, because I kind of feel like, all right, he's talking to me indirectly, being like, hey, man, whatever BS you have in your personal life, outside of work, put it aside and focus on that craft until you get to the weight room or until you get to the court later that night. You're outside of work. So, yeah.
That's exceptional. What an inspiring bit of routine you frankly have. Like that's a way to live a structured, sustainable lifestyle as far as I'm concerned. David, talk to me about the podcast. That's what brought me here. So I saw the podcast. I was like, I'm intrigued by what David's launching here. Corporate Hoops. Take a quick moment to plug the podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Corporate Buckets. And,
Corporate Buckets. Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. All good. And yeah, and I'm looking forward to talking to you later this week too, as well.
Yes.
To hear your story. So yeah, how it started was my nickname in the men's leagues out here, because we had some med device reps that were playing in our men's basketball leagues out here in Orange County, and since 2018-ish, in that range, I would have some of these games where I would have 30, 40, 50 points. And, and some of the guys would tell me, they'd be like, man, they're like, your nickname is Corporate Buckets. And I was like, why? And they're like, because you played at Arizona, you backed up all these guys that went to the NBA, you run this small corporate med device recruiting company, and then you come here and you just give buckets. And so for me personally, all my friends, like if you were one of our guys that played basketball, like I call everybody their name, and then I put buckets at the end of it. So when I'm greeting my friends, I'll be like, oh, hey, what's up, Keith Buckets? What's up, Grant Buckets? How you doing, Josh Buckets? Like, and so it just kind of became, for the last 5 years or so, like my personality. And I love talking to anything and anybody related to sports or business or small business, like, just anything like that. And I love to talk. And so I was like, you know what, it'd be fun to do a podcast called Corporate Buckets. And so I wanted to kind of test it out first. I wanted to be like, all right, let me get a logo, and then let me show it to my friends and my parents and my girlfriend to be like, hey, what do you guys think? Would you actually listen to this? And number one, and then number two, could I actually get people that would want to share their story that I could put on LinkedIn? Because every day, every week on LinkedIn, I get about 30 plus or 40 plus messages from people asking like, hey, what's your advice to start a business? And I'm just like, hey, listen, I'm a small business owner. I'm not a big business owner here. I would just say, find what you love and then do it. And look at the person in the mirror and know that you're going to battle every day with that person. And in August, my girlfriend, who's from Australia, she got an email from this group called the Players Impact. And they're a wonderful organization. They were started 6 years ago in 2017 by this lady named Tracy DeForge, and Lonnie Paxton is their main board member. He was a 3-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots. And so she got invited to the event. She was like, hey, do you want to come with me? She's like, maybe you can kind of show people what you're working on. And at first I was a little hesitant. I was like, probably not. But then I went and I ran into some people that I knew, and I talked to Lonnie, and he put me in touch with Tracy. And I just said, I was like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I just said, I would love to partner with you guys and interview all your athletes and tell their stories. And so that's how it happened. And so it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, it'll be a weekly show on LinkedIn. But yeah, for me, it's a hobby. I mean, I want to help as many people as I can, just get their stories out there, and the advice is the biggest thing too, Keith. I mean, I know for me being 30, almost 37 now, I wish I had advice from people like yourself, 15 years ago when I was 21, 22, because I mean, now there's so much advice that you can get out there, and you have so many resources to be successful. And that's been my goal with it. So yeah.
Corporate buckets.
Corporate buckets.
David Bagga, I sense a collab brewing. I sense a collab brewing with the Business Athlete Performance Lab and what you're doing on over there. So we'll talk about that in a few, off air. But before we say goodbye, one last thing. It's no month. And I'm challenging, and you have the privilege of being the first person in the seat. My future guests don't know this yet, but I'm saying no to peanut butter for the month. It is my poison. As much as I can say no to everything, for some reason, peanut butter always weaves its way back into my life. And a guy who's as structured and as sustainable and as neurotic as I am, peanut butter always gets in the way of things for me. So I'm like, all right, it's November, no month. I'm going to challenge you to pick something, your poison, and put it aside for the month of November. And let's have some fun with this on LinkedIn for the next month. Will you accept my challenge?
Yes, I will accept your challenge. And for me, it will be, I'm going to say, so my guilty pleasure is the chips Doritos.
Yeah.
So every time I'm watching a movie, I'm a huge superhero fan. So when the Marvel movies come out, when the Batman movies come out, I will bring a party-sized bag of Doritos. Of
course you do. You're a party-sized dude, though.
Yeah, I'll sneak them under my jacket, and I'm not ashamed to say this. The bag will be gone within the chips will be gone within 5 minutes, and so so that's my guilty pleasure. So that'll be my no month, no Doritos November. All
right, so you heard it here, audience. David Bagga is putting no down for the Dorito chips, and I'm putting down the peanut butter. You're going to watch us have some fun and collab across LinkedIn for the next month. David, this will be fun. I'm going to be on your show coming up, and we'll talk about no month, and maybe some of your audience might just jump on board this as well. And maybe between corporate buckets and and live in the lab, we can have some fun with this over the next month, and we can start something around no month.
Yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. David, thanks for joining me today in the lab. If you got a quick second to hang out in the green room while I say goodbye to the audience, I clearly got to have you back because an hour was not enough for the stories you have to tell and the energy you bring to the lab. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Keith. Keep up the great work, and it was a pleasure to be on, man. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Hang tight for one quick second. I'm going to flip you out of here, and I'm going to go here and then back over there. Hey, that was a lot of fun. David Bagga, Corporate Buckets, live in the lab today. You heard him. His no pledge for the month is no Doritos for the month. So we're going to hold him to that, and we're going to have some fun for the whole month. I'm joining his podcast coming up on you'll find us on LinkedIn. Today's show, you'll find it across LinkedIn, X, YouTube. We're streaming into all the platforms these days. Things are rocking and rolling. Go back to the beginning of the show. I think it'll inspire you. And then find yourself in the middle. Now, about 3/4 in, you'll hear David's routine. And I think you'll be inspired. I'm Keith Billis. I'm live in the lab. I'm live every single day, Monday to Friday, noon Central Time. You'll find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. I'm Keith. I'm out of here. Yeah, there's that button thing again. We're going to go here, and then we're going to go there,